When the Mass Effect series launched, I had initially missed the release of the first one, like completely. I didn't hear its name or anything. I don't entirely know how I managed to do that, but I think it might have been a good thing, because at the time of release in 2007, I was unable to fully appreciate a story being told in the game. That all changed when Dragon Age Origins was released, and I caught some gameplay of it back on Just on TV, which, as some of you might know, is what Twitch used to be called. After the announcement of Mass Effect 3, I ended up deciding to go back and try out the series, and for the most part, I really enjoyed it. With the launch of the Legendary Edition, it gives me the perfect excuse to go back and play through the games for the first time since 2012. On PC, whenever you launch the game, for whatever reason, it launches a completely separate full-screen launcher for you to then choose what game you're going to play, and then it launches the game. I genuinely cannot figure out why it does this, because there are other remaster collections, such as, the Insane Trilogy, where it does not do this, and like I said, I genuinely don't know why it does. During my first playthrough back in 2012, I was playing as the male Shepard, and I went with the soldier class, and decided to go through as a Paragon. So, this time I figured I'd change things up a little bit. I'm playing through as female Shepard. I'm doing the Infiltrator class, and, well, my initial goal was to go purely through as a Renegade route until I kind of accidentally messed that up by gaining Paragon points without even trying, as there are several points throughout the game where if you just are doing some objectives, you gain Paragon points, which it's kind of annoying, but hey, it is what it is. And so I just kind of changed the game, or changed my plan as if I was going through and playing it as how I would make the choices instead. Though luckily, even though I did that, I still ended up, mostly Renegade, which is a plus. The game, for the most part, feels more responsive than I remember during my playthrough of the original, when shooting and on foot anyway. The Mako, on the other hand, still controls like garbage, and I was really disappointed when I finally got back into the Mako for it to still control like the world's worst tank in a pile of marshmallow fluff, despite how easy it is to flip. And in some areas, whenever you flip it, there is no way to unflip it. You can't get out of the tank and flip it back over or anything. The only thing to do is hope that there's an autosave or a manual save where you won't lose too much progress. While talking about things getting stuck, it seems the AI loves to get stuck as well, both ally and enemy AI sometimes. They just won't leave cover, sometimes they decide to just randomly start shooting at walls where there is nothing, occasionally just refusing to move until you save and reload, which thankfully you can do as long as you're not in combat, and it'll fix itself there. Thankfully, though, I've only encountered that once or twice during my playthrough this time. The only thing I would consider as a negative, or a major negative I should say, would be the occasional sound clipping and dialogue, be it in the middle of an actual conversation tree or just while going through the environment and stuff. Occasionally I've noticed it just cuts off at full stop and it sits there in silence. Now, I know it sounds like I'm being negative about the game for the most part so far, and by no means do I hate the game or anything. I actually quite enjoy it, and those are really the only major issues I have. But for me, the good parts of Mass Effect really shine when it comes to the story as opposed to the actual gameplay. Outside of the things I mentioned previously, I haven't really encountered much to complain about. And when compared to the rest of the game, it's very minor. You're going to be spending more time on foot shooting than you will in the Mako. And the occasional sound clips, if you have subtitles on, you can get around it, even though they are annoying. And the AI bugging out you can very easily fix, like I said, just by reloading. And for those of you who care about any avoidance of like anything story, be it your companions or the actual story itself, I'm not going to be talking about that, but I will have some timestamps in the description where you can completely avoid it and join back after it's said and done. So let's talk your squadrons. Starting with Kirin, he is a Sentinel class, giving him tech and biotic abilities, and he usually has a calm demeanor and can be the voice of reason at times, which, makes him useful, especially in an area where there is a lot of tension. Ashley Williams, she's a soldier class and can be a decent addition if you need to add some combat strength to your team. And the character herself, she's kind of a bit divisive among Mass Effect fans, and honestly for pretty good reasons. If you go just off of the story cutscene, she comes across very xenophobic, which can be a very big negative, especially in a world based around alien life. But if you go into her backstory, it's more of a distrust due to family history with the First Contact War. Garrus, who is a Turian agent, he's always been one of my favorite characters, mainly because of his "if it's for the greater good, it must be done by any means possible" type of attitude, and, not being human is generally a plus with me in fantasy games due to humans are generally boring. Rex, who is a Krogan battle master, I don't really have strong feelings about one way or the other, but I do like the no BS attitude to not let emotions cloud his judgment for the most part, except for in one moment, which I will talk about later. And Tali, who is my favorite character, and I think it's mostly due in part of her being a Quarian, which I don't know why. I've always really enjoyed that race, their lore and everything. It's just fascinating to me. And then there's Tali'Zorah, who is an Asari scientist, and she's another character I don't particularly have strong feelings about either way, mostly due to I feel like she kind of comes across as an afterthought in the first game. She doesn't seem to add much to the game overall, in terms of story, that is. Now I'm going to go on to the overall story, but I won't go into very much detail, as I do recommend you play the game yourself, but I will go over some of the major story beats and my choices there within them. Now at the beginning of the game, there's a guy who runs off immediately after the ship lands and gets gunned down, and to me it does a good job for showing that in the world there is going to be death, and there is not much of anything you can do about that. While on Eden Prime, you're tasked with trying to find a beacon, which it is then discovered that the Geth have attacked, and while searching for the beacon, one of your partners is gunned down by a rogue Spectre named Saren. You then go back to the Citadel to talk to the Council and convince them that Saren has gone rogue. After proving to them that Saren has gone rogue and recruiting the rest of your party members, you then get arguably one of the best scenes in the game, where it is Shepard's acceptance into what is essentially the Spectre program. And while generally I would say being forced to play a human in any sci-fi or fantasy game would be a huge negative, this is the one time where I would argue that it works in the favor of the game. And after that scene in your introduction into the Spectre program, they give you the Normandy and send you to a handful of planets to try and find Saren and stop him before his plans come to fruition. After each major story planet hits, there's a call with the Council, and there's a little thing that they add that lets you hang up on them if they start to annoy you or whatever, and I've always liked that little feature. I really don't know why. And it'll continue to go this way until you get to the planet Vermeer, which is a major point of the game, which will ultimately lead to two choices that can drastically change your game and the subsequent games thereafter. The first one is Rex. It is discovered that there is a possible cure for the genophage on the planet, and by activating the nuke, it would destroy the genophage and possibly condemn the Krogan species to death. And the other choice is to either save Kaden or Ashley. And during the first playthrough back in 2012, I chose to save Kaden. This time I chose to save Ashley due to I want to see if her character actually develops more than the on the borderline xenophobic person that she is. And after Vermeer, you go to a couple of other planets and then end up going back to try to save the Citadel, which then culminates in a battle with Saren and one major final choice for the game, which is to save the Council or let them perish. Again, during the first playthrough back in 2012, I chose to save the Council, which then keeps the same Council into the next game. But the only difference being is they add a human member to the Council. This time I chose to let them perish, mostly to see the difference in the other games and to get the Renegade points, but it's led me to something that I genuinely hope is not the case. The way that the ending cutscene, it kind of suggests that humanity uses the opening to force their way into it and rule over the entire galaxy just because they can. And at the time of writing and recording this and editing and all that, I have yet to actually start the second game in this playthrough, so I have no idea what it ultimately comes to fruition through that choice. And I do welcome back everybody who has skipped to this point, but in ultimate conclusion, while the game does have its rough moments, I really do recommend that you play through the game if you haven't by now. I know it being an older game, a majority of you probably have, but for those who haven't, like I said, I do recommend it. It's fun, and it's a kind of a rough start to a overall fun series of games. I'm Kirin Rein, and I thank you for joining me today on this look back at the first Mass Effect game. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, turn on notifications, all that jazz. And I do hope you join me next time whenever I go through Mass Effect 2 to see how my choices have affected the world in that situation.